In 1856, a 19-year-old boy stepped off a schooner onto the sandy shore of Muskegon, Michigan. His pockets held little more than his father's trade and a laborer's hands. Charles Henry Hackley had come to build roads, grade streets, and dig where the work was hardest. No one on that muddy waterfront could have guessed they were watching the arrival of a king. The land around him was drowning in white pine, a forest so vast men believed it could never end. The rivers ran thick with timber, and the mills screamed day and night. Hackley studied the rhythm of it, the felling, the floating, the cutting, the selling. He saw, where others saw only trees, the shape of a fortune waiting to be sawn. He borrowed, he gambled. He tied his name to a small mill on the river and worked as if sleep were a luxury for lesser men. Slowly the ledgers turned in his favor, and when they did, Charles Hackley did not stop. He expanded, swallowing timber tracts and rival operations whole. Then in October of 1871, the sky over Lake Michigan glowed red. Chicago was burning. When the flames finally died, a great city lay in ashes, and it would need lumber, mountains of it, to rise again. Muskegon's mills answered the call, and Hackley's saws sang louder than ever. Fortunes poured north as Chicago rebuilt itself board by board. They began to call Muskegon the lumber queen of the world, and Hackley was her uncrowned monarch. His timber framed the homes and warehouses of a resurrected metropolis. From the disaster of one city, he built the prosperity of another. But empires of pine are never clean. In the camps and mills, men labored 12-hour days beside shrieking blades, losing fingers, arms, and lives for wages that barely fed them. When they organized and demanded more, the barons closed ranks. To some, Charles Hackley was a benefactor. To the men who bled for his profits, he was simply the boss. And the forest itself paid a terrible price. The endless pine proved not endless at all. Hillsides once dense and green stood shaved to stumps, the soil bleeding into the rivers, the game gone. The great cutting had been a harvest and a wound, and the wound would not soon heal. By the 1880s, the timber that made Muskegon rich was running out. The mills fell silent one by one, and men drifted west after the retreating forests. A boom town began its slow slide toward ruin, and its wealthiest citizen faced a choice about what his fortune had truly been for. Charles Hackley was not a warm man by most accounts. He was quiet, precise, and formidable, more comfortable with columns of figures than with company. Yet something in him refused to let his adopted city die with its industry. He turned his attention and his money homeward. First came the library, a grand stone temple of books for a working town, its shelves open to anyone who could read. He filled it with volumes and portraits, insisting that ordinary citizens deserved beauty and knowledge alike. Learning, he seemed to believe, was the one inheritance that could not be logged out. Then a hospital, so the sick would not be turned away for want of coin. Then a park, carved green and open for families who had known only sawdust and smoke. Then schools, a manual training institute, and an art gallery stocked with masterworks few small towns would ever dream of owning. The gifts totaled in the millions, an astonishing sum given while he still lived and could watch it work. Critics whispered that it was atonement, a rich man buying peace with the men and forests he had used. Perhaps it was. Or perhaps a hard man had simply decided that money hoarded was money wasted. His rivals, the other lumber barons, mostly took their fortunes and left, scattering to warmer climates and grander homes. Hackley stayed. He had come to Muskegon poor, and he resolved he would not abandon it now that it was poor again. He gave and kept on giving. He is said to have declared that he did not intend to commit the crime of dying rich, that a man who left a great fortune undistributed had failed some deeper accounting. He set about spending himself down, methodically, as if closing out a final ledger before the books were sealed. On a February day in 1905, at 68, Charles Hackley collapsed. An aneurysm took him swiftly, mid-stride in his lifelong project of giving it all away. The boy who once dug roads for wages died, having reshaped a city he could no longer save from silence. Today the forests have grown back, patient and green, over the old cut-over lands. And in Muskegon, the library still opens its doors, the park still greens each spring, and the paintings still hang for anyone to see. A complicated man left behind a complicated gift, and the town, at least, remembers his name.